Hello, everybody. I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese to high schoolers out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and I am thinking my way through the Harvard Project Zero thinking routines. So if you want to help me think about this, you can reach me at studio-nemo.com or ping me on either the Minecraft Education Ambassadors or the Duolingo Educators Network, because I love this deep thinking about how we teach language. So today, we're just starting the section of introducing and exploring ideas. And again, if there's anything repeated, I'm not going to repeat the video. You can search it up later, okay? So we're on 321 Bridge, and this is located at www.pz.harvard.edu/thinking-routines. And again, it's 321 Bridge. This also occurs in generating possibilities and analogies, and I won't repeat it when we get to there. So this is making a before and after connection. I'm going to show you there the Project Zero's graphic right here. This is the graphic that they supply with it. The thinking routine aims to help students metacognition, and I've gotten really, really into metacognition in the last several years because I think it really helps the students take ownership over their own learning. So the students are basically thinking about their thinking. It's a little tricky for us out in world language land because it relies on prior knowledge, and often when we're teaching a foreign language, well, it's foreign and it's difficult to find something to hang that hook on, especially for those of us who teach Japanese or Chinese, Mandarin or Cantonese or Korean or anything, or things that are as the Army catalogs them truly foreign languages. Okay, so we've got to find a way to hang that hook on things. So make sure you have a topic sentence that the students can really articulate their prior knowledge with. The first part of the bridge should be a quick, first thing comes to mind. Okay, don't overthink it, kids. Just the very first thing that falls out of your head. Then you teach the lesson, and you reassure your students that their initial thinking is neither right nor wrong. You're just trying to build those connections for them. And then they have to say how or why their thinking changed when they get to the next part. Explain how your new responses connect to or change from your initial responses. And encourage them to change their thinking. That empathy piece is going to be huge, okay? Again, if you're just looking at grammar and you're trying to think of a thinking routine for grammar, which could be pop-up grammar, grammar translation method, the audiolingual method, and you're looking at transformation drills, you're doing some community language learning and you're dissecting a script your class wrote, or you're working straight out of your textbook and you're like, I need something more solid for my students. The prior knowledge that I normally rely on is how English works. And the reason is because my very, very first year teaching, I had one student raise his hand, and this was at the start of second semester. And he said, in English, he said, I probably should have asked this a long time ago, but what's a verb? So don't assume that your students have ever thought about grammar in their native language. You're going to have to teach that. Your English language arts teachers colleagues are no longer teaching that. You're going to have to be the one who teaches the parts of speech. But to be fair, I always tell my students that even if you never use Spanish or French or Japanese or insert whatever language you're teaching here, I tell my students, you're still going to get a deeper appreciation of the English language and the American culture because you're reflecting back on it. You're thinking about it now. You haven't thought about grammar since you were 2 years old and you said, I got 2 feet. And you certainly haven't thought about our American culture. It's just something that you've lived with all your life. And so this is a good way for you to reflect back on it. One way I've used this thinking routine pretty well is with passé composé in French. This is a tense that starts off pretty easy for the students, but suddenly there are a lot of balls they're juggling in the air. So the prior knowledge that they have is that adjectives have to match nouns. So I point out, il est grand, elle est grande, I leave it like that, and I wait for the students to correct me. Oh, there has to be an E on the end of this because adjectives describe nouns, and this adjective has to describe that this noun is feminine. Okay, so then I have them write their 3 words or ideas, their 2 questions, their 1 metaphor simile. The writing, again, should be quick, first thing that comes to mind. And then I show them how passé composé with être is the same thing as when they made adjectives. There's a lot of overcorrection where now that we go back to the passé composé with avoir and they want to start adding e's and s's on the end of thing there. But fortunately, I've predicted that because I'm a language teacher and part of my job is to predict where the students are going to trip up so that I can prepare for that and get them past that. So I have a giant novelty pen with Elsa on it from Frozen. And so I say, okay, I've got this pen. It's got Elsa on it. Can I change it to un stylo instead of un stylo? And no, because stylo is always masculine. And I'm like, oh, but I'm holding it and I'm a girl. Can I change it to un stylo because I'm holding it and I'm a girl? No, it's just something I have. Okay. And so I can bring them back to avoir is something you have and être is something you are. And so that's why the adjective needs to match. But you know, there's a lot of prior knowledge I need to connect to on that. After a few days of practice, I have them do the second part, the how has your thinking changed, but it's a pretty big cognitive demand. It's a huge cognitive demand. So this is a work in progress. I don't have all the answers. I'm a teacher. Every year I do things differently. Okay. I find it much more effective to use training wheels. And so with each past tense sentence in a drill and kill, and my drill and kill is usually like blue git. So here's some blue gits. All right. Cause I like games. What can I say? Okay. So I have a follow-up question. That's the metacognition. Why did you do what you did? And the student should be able to articulate either it's la maison d'être, or it's masculine, or it's more than one person, something along that line. The metacognition is so important. I think it really helps them learn faster. All right, so when we're teaching literature, culture, history, art, you've got a cooking lesson, you've got a song you're listening to. Give your students word banks and sentence frames as always, okay? And there's a lot of cognitive demand. You may end up mixing quite a bit of English in. It's okay to code switch. Just keep writing the new words on the board as you introduce them, okay? So here's an example in action. I give my students a choice of what they want to read, and we have a book walk. I put out a lot of books on the table, and the students go through them, and they pick them up, and a lot of times they choose books that have a lot of white space, which is fine. And many times, one of my French classes will say, oh, Babar, I recognize Babar, and they think it's going to be easy. So, bwahaha, I always overcomplicate things, right? Okay, so one time when they chose this, I do it differently every year, of course, but one time we used 3-2-1 bridge, and after we just barely started, I said, okay, now we need to talk about the Caucasian elephant in the room. Ha ha ha, linguists love puns, right? So we discussed colonialism, and we read Babar, and then we did the second part of the thinking routine. So I didn't want to destroy anyone's childhood memory. I just wanted to deepen their understanding of the generation that it was written in and the way the world was when it was written in so that they could view it from an adult perspective and not a child perspective, okay? Then I took out my secret copy of Tonton au Congo. Okay, it is a secret copy. I do not leave it on the shelf. This is an absolutely horrible book. I'm going to say it. It's a horrible book, okay? Everyone who was in that particular French class that we did it this way, okay, they still love Babar. They still love Tonton, but now they appreciate them from a very adult perspective, not a naive child perspective, okay? They're able to argue whether Jean de Brunhoff and his wife, who never gets any credit, let's go ahead and call that out, did he subconsciously create Babar as a justification for colonialism? Or was he just nostalgic for a pre-1914 simpler France since World War I had destroyed everything? And the students understand that Hergé, who wrote Tonton, really regretted taking that big bag of money to write this piece of trash. He regretted it until the day he died, but he did accept that big bag of money, and he did make that choice, and he did have to live with it. So the students, I think, can think more deeply about the question, what do we believe today that 50 years from now will make people gasp? And I think that's pretty huge to get them projecting into the future. What are we missing now? What do we have our rose-colored glasses on for right now? So I think my students are much more mature from this thinking routine. In our next episode, we're going to tackle chalk talk. Hope to see you there.